Volantis, Fire, House Errante, Grand Palace. "Are you certain they are the ones?" asked Viscount Ucem Errante, head of House Errante, an imposing boulder of a man, a little over 2 meters tall with a gut to match. He was sitting on a massaging chair while a large parasol protected his form from the star's rays. 2 servants were on their knees, quietly massaging his feet. His cybernetic gray eyes lazily inspected the information before him as his wife, Baroness Mistra Errante, idly drank a strong glass of fine whiskey, her cybernetic eyes silently examining the report in more detail. "Yes, my lord," said a man kneeling before the corpulent Viscount. "We've confirmed the information 3 separate times. The name Wyatt is not a terribly uncommon name, but narrowing our options proved to be rather simple. Of the matching Wyatt staples in our records and systems, only one matches all our search patterns. Wyatt Staples, oldest son of Wirt Staples and Winona Staples, older brother of Weskull and Wham Staples." Mistra eloquently pronounced each name as her tongue burned with the pleasure of her favored drink. "I expected something more impressive for a man embraced by a princess of House Astor, one capable of such carnage, no less." "Commoners are commoners, my dear," Ucem replied, with a little laugh rumbling in his throat. "Though you must admit a step above the usual stock. Marginally better grades in his studies, unremarkable work in a woodmill, not a single complaint from the local overseers, or marks of misconduct filed during his time working there. Soon after he turned 14, he passed the exam and requirements to join the academy in the Royal Navy branch, where he then would study and train to become a pilot." The Baroness paused to take another long sip from her drink. The cubes of ice clanging together and against the fine glass created a symphony she adored. "His family is no better. The father is a mid-level electrical engineer and mechanic. The mother is a social worker focused on teaching practical skills to underachieving young women, mere plebeians. The first brother is a notoriously exceptional Clixal hunter. It seems he failed to show for his final certification to become an elite hunter." Her eyes narrowed. "The date matches with the broadcast reclaiming the Hastrung system." "Further evidence that they are his real family and not mere fabrications," Ucem commented lazily, fingers brushing against his brown mustache, the same color as his shoulder-length hair. He flexed his toes and legs, but his servants followed his movements with experienced tact, never ceasing or even pausing their job. Then a chortle escaped past his lips. "Commoners with tight familial bonds are a rarity, are they not, my dear?" "Indeed so, dearest husband of mine," Mistra replied, her gaze fixed on the report. "The second brother is an electrical engineer in training, and already showcases promise to be a step above his father and his peers. Nothing stands out of the ordinary." Licking her lips dejectedly, she continued. "They are so mundane it is almost disappointing." "Looks and appearances can be deceiving at first glance, my dear," Ucem pointed out. With a snap of his fingers, a maid approached, carrying a tray. On it, a glass filled with a sparkling blue liquid rested. Taking the glass, he drank half of it before putting it back on the tray. The boy must have been blessed with superior intellect and cunning far beyond that of his siblings and parents. Who knows? Perhaps these commoners are marginally more competent than the rest of the chaff. If the Reaper and the Prince himself have shown their favor, then they must have seen something we have yet to witness. "Perhaps," the black-haired woman replied, drinking the last of her glass before a servant took her glass, replacing it with another ready for her to enjoy. Using both hands, she caressed her naked neck and moved her braided hair out of the way as she hummed thoughtfully. "Should we make a move?" Ucem pinched his mustache, gaze wandering from the screen to the sight of most of his spawn playing in the pool. They were joined by some of their closest cousins and promising youths from their 2 branching houses. He could hardly remember the names of half of them without aid from his 6th assistant. He focused on his oldest son and second daughter. His son Neolo was tall, strong, confident, and capable, a reflection of himself a couple of decades ago. But unlike him in his younger years, Neolo took his role seriously and didn't seem to crave more power than what he had. A fine trait all on its own. His second daughter, Onira, was the spitting image of her mother when they met, but she inherited his hair color. She was obedient, cheerful, and had a sharp mind. Beauty, intellect, and talent for organization and commerce. She was also 20 years old, and an opportunity to seek alliances or political favor through marriage had, so far, eluded her. "Marry our daughter to a commoner?" Mistra asked, knowing what was going through her husband's mind, her tone remaining more curious than indignant. He's not a commoner anymore. Not in title, at least. That's more than enough to overlook his shortcomings, Ukam replied. But in blood, education, upbringing, shall I continue? Mistra countered, sipping from her glass. It matters little. What is important to consider is the value House Arante could gain from such a possibility. As far as we know, Wyatt Staples is unmarried. Think about it. An uneducated baron with no knowledge of complex interpolitical nobility systems is ours for the taking. One who is incidentally supported by House Astor. We would be true and complete idiots if we're not willing to sacrifice a daughter for the potential gains such a union could bring to our house, my dear. A laugh rumbled in his chest and gut. I'm certain that hungry and clever ladies are already clamoring for his attention in hopes of snatching such a fresh kill for themselves. What you speak is indeed true, Ukam. However, I must object. How do we know this can indeed be a possibility? She countered, setting her drink aside for the moment. He could already be betrothed to a lady of the prince's choosing. If he isn't, then how long will it take for such a fool to be captivated by the wiles of women desiring his objective power and influence? Furthermore, my dear husband, where there are potential gains, there are also chasms and pitfalls of risk. What assures us he won't fall out of favor with his benefactors? Will he survive long enough for our proposal to hold any merit? Not to mention the Reaper herself. He is certainly within her inner circle at the very least. More than likely, nothing more than a capable pet or a lesser dog she can unleash upon her enemies, where the blood-rend can't. Wolfhound. Is it a threat, a joke, a promise, or an apt descriptor? Do we truly wish to step on the tail of such a beast? Life is full of risks, my dear. Taking them when you do not know where you are stepping is a foolish decision. But this path is only partially obscured, not permitted by the mist of the morning call in the forest, Ukam replied, as he called for the rest of his beverage. Drinking it, he let out a loud burp before continuing. Do we tread the path? Mistra drank her whiskey, nearly moaning after she downed the entire glass. We wait. His family is here. Even if he is to be married or ensnared by a hussy, Volantis will benefit from being his homeworld. The path is too obscured for us to make a decision just yet. Agreed. Other houses are searching for his family with no success. They will find them soon, I'm sure, he said, quickly glancing at the servants around him. They had heard everything, after all. He could forbid them from speaking, but where was the fun in doing something so doltish? Before we move, let us see the other fish swim about. We'll act upon it if Wyatt Staples decides to reject or embrace his family in full. If trouble is to arise, Neolo will answer the call, Mistra noted. Onira will not object if the possibility exists to chain him to our house. Indeed so, my dear. Indeed so. Receiving a newly filled glass alongside his wife, he raised his hand high. May Baron Wyatt Staples' fortune be great and the favor he carries never dwindle. Cheers! Mistra joined in half-heartedly, clanging her glass with her husband's. Volantis, Fire Outskirts, Staples household. Winona entered her home with worry gripping her heart and stress mounting on her back. Closing the door behind her, she set her bag on the table before sitting on the couch, letting out a tired sigh. To her surprise, the voice of her youngest child called out to her a moment later. Long day, Mom? Wham asked from somewhere inside the house. Water? Please, Winona replied, and waited until Wham walked out of the kitchen a few seconds later carrying a glass of water. She received it as her son sat down next to her. With her throat refreshed after drinking half of it, she turned to Wham. I thought you'd be with your father all day, sweetie. Wham frowned slightly. Dad sent me back. Said I wouldn't be able to shut my trap at work. I mean, he's not wrong, but still, how does he expect me not to be proud of Wyatt? His hazel eyes suddenly gained brilliance as a smile spread across his face. Winona exhaled through her nose as she reached for her son's right cheek. She caressed it gently for a few seconds before finding her voice. There's nothing wrong with being proud of your brother, Wham. I'm also very proud of him. But we shouldn't speak about him lightly outside our home, dear. I know, said Wham, his spirit intact. But, Mom, Wyatt is out there fighting against the traitor Duke and kicking butts. He's a noble and is working for a princess. He's even a baron. He's my brother, and I want everyone to know who he is. It sucks that we can't. It's for his own safety, Wham, Winona added, leaning closer to kiss her son's forehead. Noble life is different from our own. When nobles figure out we're his family, they'll come to us. Wham huffed. What's so wrong about that? Wyatt's so great that other blue bloods want to meet him. That's precisely the problem, Wham. Noble society is different. They'll want to meet him not because they care about him, but because they think they'll gain something from him. I don't know how or why that works, only that it does. I've seen many lesser nobles do similar things among each other. And what if some of them don't like him? What if they want to hurt him? But he's not here. And if someone tries to harm him, then he'll kill them, right? Shoot them like he did on the ship, Wham replied, frowning. Winona winced slightly at the memory of seeing her oldest son butchering his way through the gallant venture. Both footage were starkly similar, but the second was far more brutal. More real, but even so, it churned her stomach. She disliked violence even though she understood the need for it. Imagining her son killing so casually felt so alien, yet it didn't surprise her. It was a baffling sentiment that she couldn't quite explain. However, it warmed her heart that Wham's first instinct gravitated toward his oldest brother. Wham had always seen Wyatt as a role model. Maybe as the youngest, he felt Wyatt's loneliness and wanted to help him. Whatever the case may be, his love and adoration for Wyatt were genuine. Even so, Wham was far too simple-minded to understand the risks Wyatt's elevation brought to them properly. Granted, she barely understood it herself, but it was enough to recognize the dangers. They don't need to harm him to hurt him, Wham. They could harm us. How many nobles suffer from accidents or are found dead? Winona asked, and realization seemed to dawn on the young man. But we're not nobles, he protested. We're commoners and we obey. Isn't that enough for them? It wouldn't matter to them, Wham, she explained. It's just a matter of time before they find us. I heard many ladies and servants gossiping about it. There was a man who claimed to be Wyatt's father, but he was executed shortly after for his deceit. Today, my supervisor asked me if I knew something about Wyatt, questioning me about him because they remembered Wyatt's name. I told them that I didn't know anything and that the last time I heard from Wyatt, he was in the lingering systems working as a hauler pilot. A shudder crawled up her spine. Then, Mom, what should we— Wham began, but was cut off by a loud yet polite series of knocks at the entrance. I'll get it, he said, standing up and marching to the door. Peering through the peephole, the sight confused him greatly. He expected to find Mr. Warlow or one of their neighbors on the other side. What he found instead was a finely dressed man with trimmed hair, a short mustache, and a goatee. His brown eyes stared at the door with a blank, unimpressed expression. The man wasn't a noble, but it was clear he was a servant of one. Who is it, Wham? Winona asked as she stood up, catching her son's surprise. See for yourself, Mom, he said, stepping aside. Winona took her son's invitation, finding what he saw. Her heart skipped a beat, and she felt as if her stomach had suddenly dropped to the vicinity of her ankles. A shaking hand reached for the knob, only for Wham to grip it before she could. With a smile, he put himself between her and the door, shielding her from any possible threat. Slowly, he opened the door. Instantly, the man's expression softened as he bowed his head slightly in greeting. Who might you be? Never seen you or people like you around before, asked Wham, while his mother stared at the man in silence from behind him. Now that the door was open, they could see a silver automobile parked under the shade of a tree next to the road. Salutations. I'm a servant and envoy of his lordship, Baron Canaro Olegaste. The man presented himself with poise and cordiality. Reaching into his suit, he pulled a small letter and handed it over to Wham. He sends his most cordial and sincerest congratulations to his lordship, Baron Wyatt Staples, on his elevation and his achievements. My lord wishes for your good health and the prosperity of Lord Staples in equal measure. Please be so kind as to inform his lordship, Baron Staples, of my lord's warm, genuine, and earnest greeting. Have a good day. With that said, the man bowed his head once more before turning away, walking toward the vehicle. Wham and Winona stared at the man until he boarded the vehicle. With a barely perceptible roar of ignition, the vehicle began to move, soon running down the road. Once it was way down the road, they saw Mr. Warlow making his way to their house. Wham swallowed hard as Winona closed her eyes, her fears realized. What do we do now, Mom? Wham asked, staring at the letter sealed in wax and bearing the sigil of a swan with its wings spread. The sigil of House Olegast, if they were to take a guess. Winona didn't answer in words. Instead, she reached for her son's free hand, gripping it tightly. Strung near the Nornavio. Now be careful. Put your fighter into a spin like I'll do. Wyatt ordered as he proceeded to put his fighter into a clockwise spin. Not too fast, but it wasn't gentle either. On his screen, he saw Clara's fighter imitate him. "This is harder than I thought," Clara called out, her voice strained yet intermingled with genuine mirth. Wyatt smiled, letting her experience the spin for 10 seconds before deciding it was enough. "You're doing great. Now stabilize yourself slowly. If you do it too fast, you'll injure yourself," he warned as he stabilized his fighter. Clara obeyed his command. "Wyatt, does it always get so hot inside a raptor fighter?" she asked, panting slightly once her fighter was stabilized. "Not always, but it is normal," Wyatt replied. "Adrenaline makes your body heat up, and it gets trapped in the armor and the cockpit. It's not what you expected?" "Wyatt, please. I've seen countless videos and read twice as many reports, but I never thought it would feel this good." "This is exciting," Clara replied, ending with a powerful laugh. Wyatt felt the same sense of pride and accomplishment he felt after finishing a task successfully upon hearing his friend's declaration. She could understand what her joy meant to her, after all. Marking the end of the tests he needed to run, he noted the small imperfections the prototype had, made a note of them, and secured all the data Jincho would need. Even so, the improvements were significant and something he couldn't have imagined on his own. If he can do this on a whim, then what will he be able to do with more information and data? I'll share Maximilian's teachings with him. He'll put the technical data to better use, I'm sure of it, Wyatt thought, making up his mind. The test run had gone without incident. Clara, as promised, shadowed his movements and imitated his maneuvers, always maintaining her distance. At first, her clumsiness was more than evident, as she hesitated at times or struggled to locate the proper controls from time to time. But she was not only a quick learner, she was an avid one. It didn't take long for her to handle the Raptor with the skill of an average cadet back in the academy, more than enough for Wyatt to feel that she could handle what he had planned for her. "If I get in trouble for this, it'll be worth it. At least I don't have to fear losing my head anymore." "I think," he thought with some doubt before clearing his throat. "Clara, I finished running the necessary tests." He paused, hearing a sad yet understanding sigh from the other end. "However, before we return, I'm going to test your newfound skills." "Test me? Oh. Are we going to race?" she asked eagerly. "Not quite," he said before manually locking onto Clara's fighter. "You're going to put everything you've learned to use. Your goal is to evade the missile until it runs out of fuel." "What?" Clara asked, baffled. "Wyatt, what do you mean by evade the missile?" "What I just said," Wyatt said, pressing the button that released one of the dummy missiles. It soon corrected its trajectory and launched itself at Clara's fighter. He heard the alarm going off on Clara's fighter, followed not by a scream of panic, but by one of excitement. He watched as Clara broke formation and ran into open space, engaging her thrusters. "Don't go outside the designated combat zone," Wyatt ordered, causing Clara to adjust her trajectory as the missile pursued her. "If it gets within 500 meters of you, it'll self-destruct. If that happens, you lose. If you leave the area, you lose. If you surrender, you lose." "And if I win?" asked the princess as she weaved and moved in erratic motions. Hardly professional, but that wasn't the goal. The way she used what little she'd learned whilst moving way, way faster than during the test was the goal. "I'll do whatever you want," Wyatt replied with a smile, keeping track of her and the missile while shadowing her movements, albeit at a reduced speed. "You're a knight banneret and a baron under House Astor's patronage," she exclaimed before putting her fighter into a more violent spin as she made a hard turn upward. You have to," she huffed with difficulty, "do whatever I say already." "I can always refuse. I think a certain princess told me I shouldn't obey every order given to me blindly," Wyatt countered. "Two-faced demon! Charlatan! Silver-tongued liar!" Clara cried out as she tried to outrun the missile. Wyatt chuckled lightly, but he already knew what the result would be. Despite her implants, augmentations, and enhancements, Clara had no experience dealing with the strain of piloting a fighter. By her own confession, she had never done anything physically difficult throughout her entire life. She did her best, and that was more than enough. Besides, the goal wasn't to win, but for her to have a good time. It took the better part of a minute for the missile to cross the threshold. Once it did, it suddenly flipped around, decelerating at maximum propulsion, utilizing the rest of its fuel in mere seconds. Then, an explosion just powerful enough to shatter it and render it into a small cloud of debris marked the end of the run. Had she had more experience or proper guidance, she would have focused on making more tricks and quick turns, forcing the missile to exhaust its veering fuel. It was a basic training routine for emergencies in case you didn't have flares or weapons to use. Let's return. Decelerate as you approach. You'll land first, Clara, he ordered. How was it? It was amazing, Clara replied, her breathing hard, yet the pleased satisfaction in her voice was more than evident. Truly, truly amazing. And you get to experience this every time you go out? Most of the time I'm getting shot at. This is far more enjoyable. Just me, flying in space with nothing to worry about, Wyatt countered. She giggled as she panted. You make it sound as if you miss your compost hauling days, Wyatt. Sometimes I do, he confessed. Nothing is better than killing Drazen, but not having to fight at all is even better. Sure, it was an unremarkable role, but I still served the Principality, and I got to fly among the inky black. A victory if there ever was one. I believe I understand your point of view, she said, pausing for a few seconds as her breath slowly returned to normal. Regardless, my envy is greater than what you can fathom. For you to experience this immense, unexplainable thrill and joy? She laughed a distant, sad but hungry laugh. You do realize that now that I've tasted this most addictive fruit, I will demand it at another occasion. Cynthia warned me that would be the case, but if I can make it happen again, then I will, Your Majesty. Your knight banneret shall escort you diligently and protect you from all harm, Wyatt exclaimed with the certainty that came from many repetitions. Ah, I see that Redford has been giving you lessons in proper prose and social etiquette, she pointed out in a teasing tone. Wyatt scoffed. Galt was right. Being an officer is more than giving orders. It seems that most of what entails being an officer has to do with social norms and other pointless things, in my opinion. Such is the life of a noble, my dear Wyatt. Now, are you ready to face Redford? He's been asking for a private link with me ever since the run ended. I don't think he's all too pleased with you firing a missile at me, even if it was just a dummy, Clara warned. Shit, Wyatt declared with a sigh, dreading the commander's punishment. Yet there was not a sliver of regret to be found. Matcha, Prince's quarters. What would you do in my place, Juliana? The prince asked as he moved a rook, taking a black pawn. How would you repay a blood debt? It depends on the gravity of said debt, my liege. I believe House Winfield has paid that debt, Juliana replied, countering the prince's move by capturing his other rook with her queen. What makes you think you haven't covered said debt, my liege? The prince frowned, then sighed as he toppled his king, seeing his defeat was inevitable. Wordlessly, he began to reassemble the board. What I've granted is nothing more than what loyal service and sacrifice have earned him. Worse, I believe I've only set him on a path most perilous. Him and those closest to him. Unguarded. Unprotected, he spat in contempt. Is that how I, the prince, reward those who serve me with loyalty? How do I repay a debt that wealth and power cannot cover? If I may, my liege? Juliana asked as the board was set once again. This time she had whites. Picking up a knight, she made her opening move. I suggest that, much like the knight, we strike where our potential enemies least expect it. Not in force, but in the shadows. Not overt, but ever watchful. The prince hummed deeply, matching Juliana's move. A debt to be repaid in such a way? But who to send? I'll need ears and eyes present as well as the means to act if need be. Allow me to make that choice for you, my prince, she said, moving a pawn. Our agents are in limited supply, but I know one who will be suitable for such a task. With your permission, I'll dispatch him to Volantis within the hour. The prince nodded. It's only a matter of time before the eyes of many focus their gaze on that planet, regardless of intent. He hummed again. Make it so, Juliana.